Good evening, everyone. I have 6 o'clock. The mayor and Councilmember Circo are unavailable this evening, so we have a majority of the council here, obviously. First item on our work session agenda tonight is on housing development. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. And I do want to alert the council that staff will have one item under other. Hate to keep you too long. I know everybody wants to get home to the big game, and I am, of course, talking about KU. Anyway, there have been, over the course of several council meetings and some of our presentations, I know the council has had some questions regarding the makeup of housing and just trying to clarify some of the numbers that are associated with that. So we wanted to get that out on the table and some definitions out on the table tonight. And as I said, I'll have one other item. Tonight is all just informational and data for you. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gress on the housing issues.
Thank you, sir. As Mr. Fearborn mentioned, the council over the last several years has seen new housing developments, expansions of previously approved developments, other forms of housing within the city. And so I wanted to provide a little bit of background for, in general, what our housing stock is right now. So kind of what's being passed out, a couple different charts. The first one is going to be our existing housing stock as it is right now, the number of dwelling units by type, the numbers and the percentages of each of those. The second page in that is going to be projects that have been approved by the city but may not have been built yet. This includes new developments that have been approved but are not built, or phases of subdivisions that have some sort of approval. 4 phases might be built, but phases 6 through 10 are not. Those are all considered approved developments. They just aren't built yet. And then the last page in there is going to be the assumption that if all of the housing units that are on that second page were built tomorrow, those percentages would be what our housing makeup would be in the city. Before I get into each of those charts, I wanted to kind of lay out what the definitions and different types are of housing that we track in the city, and maybe explain and answer any questions that there might be associated with those. The first thing you'll see in your chart is what we consider just traditional single-family units, detached single-family dwellings. That is going to take the form of any detached single-family home, so think of your traditional neighborhood, anything in Creekmore to Parkside to Foxhaven. Any of our traditional neighborhoods is going to be a single-family dwelling. Those structures don't share any common walls, any demising walls, or anything like that with any other structure. It is a standalone unit. The next category of our homes is what we consider two-family, often referred to as attached single-family or two-family, and what that constitutes is strictly just duplexes. The reason we consider those as attached single-family, generally when those are built, there is a separation wall within those, meaning that is what is referred to as the common wall, demising wall, the separation between those two units. The way that those are built, those units can be rented or they can be sold, and both units can be occupied or rented or owned by different owners. So that's what constitutes attached single family. That demising wall, if those two units, think about if they were pulled apart by a couple feet, those units would stand on their own. There's nothing that's really structurally important about those two units being together. The next category would be multifamily, and that would constitute anything beyond a duplex, so think threeplex up to an eightplex. Our code actually limits you can't have more than 8 units in this type of building, so anything from a threeplex up to an eightplex is what we constitute as multifamily in that category. And then the last section would be apartments, which in its sense is multifamily, but we classify that as a different category because an apartment is different from the multifamily in the sense that there's not those separating walls that are structurally independent. You have to access typically a common interior hallway or something that's dependent on you being close to or next to somebody else's unit in order to get to your unit, if that makes sense. So those are kind of the different categories. Me and Mr. Fearborn were talking today. When we do our permitting each month and throughout the year, we report to a couple different agencies outside of Raymore. So the Home Builders Association, we report most of our addressing to like the 911 data system and things like that. So that kind of explains why we classify these things the way that we do, because we report them to other agencies that track those metrics this way as well. So hopefully that answers any questions about what constitutes our different housing makeup or what those units would be. I kind of wanted to jump into some of the charts and just go through what some of the background on those are. So the first chart, as you'll mention, you'll see this in every edition of our monthly report. As we permit new homes and issue occupancy permits on new homes each month, this chart gets updated and is put into the monthly report each month, so you can kind of track what that looks like. But again, I kind of explained what each of those unit types are, and you can see that predominantly our existing housing stock of what is here today is still detached single family, with the other three categories comprising duplexes, multifamily, and apartments. With respect to approved developments, I kind of wanted to go through some of the different developments that have been approved and kind of give a status update on some of those. Again, what you see on this second page would be lots out there that are approved where somebody could come in today and pull a permit to build. It's developments that have had some sort of preliminary approval. They might be waiting to file more final plats, but the city overall has approved X amount of units or dwelling units for that subdivision. Or there are two on here that are still going through the review process. These numbers were put together as if those were going to be approved, just for sake of what is under review right now. So in terms of approved developments, within Creekmore overall, there's about an approximation of about 219 lots left to be developed in Creekmore. That is what constitutes subdivisions that we have not seen any plans for quite yet. So in general, about 220 lots left before Creekmore is fully built out. Creekside Ranch, that was a large lot development we approved late last year. It's out off Agora Road in Kurzweil. 23 3 to 5 acre lots. They have been platted, but we have not seen any, we have not approved the construction plans as of yet. Cunningham Fourth, that is part of Creekmore, so I subtracted it out of the overall Creekmore. That is a project that we have going through the process right now. We have plans in hand, so I kind of separated that out from what undeveloped Creekmore is. The estates at Knoll Creek, there is 37 undeveloped lots remaining out there that have been approved. They're currently building in the third phase of that right now, have a few homes that have been constructed, but overall there are 37 more lots that are left to be approved at some point in the future. Madison Valley, this is right here north of 58, east of Sunset. We should be getting a handful of permits there. The council, as you may remember at your last meeting, accepted the public improvements for that phase. So housing construction should start there in the next couple of weeks. Parkside overall, that development was approved for 369 homes in its entirety. That is one where we have seen some subdivision work being platted. We just issued the first 4 permits here last month in that development. Prairie View at the Good Ranch would be down closer to the interchange. That is a partially developed subdivision there with 56 lots remaining. I believe they have 10 homes that have been constructed there so far. Saddlebrook would also be right across from Hubach Hill. 144 lots that have been approved, or I'm sorry, 172 lots that have been approved. The first phase of that has been platted, so it's factored into one of these other charts already, but 144 lots remaining there. And then Sendera, they are actively building the infrastructure out there for 428 lots over the next couple of years. The next two would be the 2 projects that are currently going through the approval process. So you'll see Whitetail Run, they are proposing 503 lots, single family, detached single family, and then Timber Ridge would be the 70 unit duplex development there south of the depot. The asterisk there, of course, those have not, one of those projects has not made it to the city council yet. The other one is still waiting on the final reading. So those have not been approved yet, but the caveat being if they were approved, that's what the numbers would be in our inventory. And then 2 other projects with respect to apartments specifically. The Raymore Senior Village is a development that is north of Price Chopper, has an approved site plan from, I think, 2000, mid-2000s for 96 senior units there. That development never happened, but it still is an approved site plan, so there's 96 units that could be built there. And then the Timber Trails mixed use would be the mixed use project there south of, or surrounding Benton House. The council approved that PUD and preliminary plan earlier this year, and the city has not seen any final applications for that yet. But that's kind of what constitutes the approved lots or dwelling units in the city. So again, then the next page would be kind of comparing existing housing stock. If all of those units that I just mentioned were built tomorrow and we came in and there were houses on all those lots, the percentages that you see on this full build out would be what would constitute our housing makeup at that point. You can see it still remains fairly well balanced, even with the plethora of other developments that are kind of out there with their approvals. And then the last page, again, is just kind of a different way of looking at our housing makeup. Again, still separated by the different classifications. We often talk about comparing these percentages to detached single-family units compared to duplexes, or detached single-family compared to everything else that we have in the city. So that chart just kind of illustrates, if you were to break down each of these different units, those percentages are relatively the same and kind of break out the same as they would looking at the housing makeup today. So happy to answer any questions. I know this is probably a lot of information, a lot of housing projects that are kind of out there, but happy to answer any questions that this might have generated, or if the council has any specific questions at all.
On that last page, is one of those numbers 4% or 11% incorrect? Because 11 and 4 adds up to 15, not 16.
Those are actually rounded, sir.
Oh, they're rounded?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Question, as far as the developments that are existing, I was kind of curious, are there some that are going very slowly right now, or are there some that are going really fast right now, or?
Yeah, so it does vary. I'll go to this is what I tell folks when I talk about my time with the city. Prairie View of the Good Ranch was the first project that I worked on as a planner when I started in 2016. And since then, they've built 10 homes in that development. So some of these depend on who the builder is and who the developer was. So Prairie View and Knoll Creek, I would say, are two of the ones that are a little bit on the slower side of things. Knoll Creek is just now picking up. We've issued, I think, 2 more permits in there. In terms of busy developments, I would say that Creekmore is by and far our busiest development. They have the most development-ready lots in their development. So Cunningham Fourth, I would expect all those, once that infrastructure is in, to also be a busy phase. Parkside now, obviously with the landfill not being a problem anymore, we've started to see the interest come back in that development with at least one new builder who has not built in Raymore before, and then Mr. Carr is actively working with other builders that are already in the city. So I would expect that project to pick up here relatively quickly now that they've got some good interest and traction back. And then, as I mentioned, Madison Valley, I would expect that to be a very busy development here based on the way that developer has done work in the past. They will generally pull 10 to 15 permits at once, get that work started, and then just kind of progress their way through the development. And then Sendera, that's one that sat idle for quite a while. They are actively working out there, and I would expect Summit, by the time they get some of their lots ready, to be pretty busy out there in the next 8 months or so.
And I would add to that, of course, the Raymore Senior Village at the bottom, those apartments, that is the Mako project that we actually testified last week against that. Just to let the council know and update you on that particular phone call, as Mr. Gressett indicated, it's all Zoom. Very administrative. Have no idea if any of the commissioners were even there. It's all recorded. We heard from two different clerks, kind of giving us the outline on how, one gave us the outline on how it would work. The other one thanked us. Mr. Gress did a very good job of describing the city and reminding the commission eventually that we are a city for all ages, an award-winning city for all ages. It's not about necessarily the stock. It's definitely about the developer in this case. Very statesmanlike phone call. Didn't try to tear anybody down, but pointed out very clearly that it's a problem. It's an ongoing problem. Several of the people who had testified in favor of what is down south have, since the building was occurring, actually came to us along with some residents with significant problems. There were 6 other testimonies during the phone call, none of them about this one. A lot of people reading their testimony, living next door, which was kind of interesting. You start a phone call with, "Hey, y'all," but then it sounds like you're talking at a much different level when you're reading your statement to them. So who knows who else was on the call. It was, however, very interesting. we had turned in before the call, there had been interchanges between Mr. Gress and the developer down there on some of the deficiencies and the problems we had, and they had written back very high level, trying to respond to our concerns with a whole lot of state talk. So I suspect that they at least had a representative on the call, and they were wanting to be able to say to the commission at some point in the future when they're making their verbal application that, hey, as we know that this call occurred, here's the email we sent. They're talking about, you know, the governor's order on drought and a lot of stuff that I'm sure is a concern to them and is not a concern to us.
Any other questions of staff? Housing development? Guess we're ready to move on to others, sir.
Perfect, sir. Thank you. Wanted to alert you all that the EPA has, over the course of the last many months, established entirely new rules for lead and copper in our water lines. And they have issued an unfunded mandate that the city is responsible for going in and inspecting all public and private lines, which means for the first time, uncomfortably, we are going to be asking people if we can go into their homes and inspect their lines. Probably the one piece of good news in all of this is any homes that were built after 1989 are covered. By their rule, those homes could not be built with lead or copper in the lines, and so that'll be, and specifically lead, we will be able to rule those folks out ahead of time, but because this house may be within the rule and this house across the street outside, we feel like we have to alert everybody, but tell them if your home's built after 1989, don't worry about this. We're trying to make things as simple as we can, but the reason I'm alerting the council is this letter will probably go out in the next 2 weeks. So all of your constituents are going to get something requiring an action, and of course, we'll be following up over the course of months, I'm sure. People won't be responding. We're trying to make it simple by just having the scan code. A lot of folks have had work who knew they had lead lines, got them replaced themselves, and there's a report that is filled out for that. They can scan the code if they've got that and just send in the report to us, and we don't have to worry about going into their homes. If they don't have it, they can hire a contractor if they're uncomfortable with us coming into their homes. Or we can go in and inspect them very quickly and know very quickly whether or not they have a lead line pipe using their water. For the most part, we think the vast majority of homes, even the ones built before 1989, do not have lead pipes, but we do have some older areas of town that this may impact significantly more than others. But I did want to alert you that this letter is going out. It's basically constructed by the EPA. We had to have a little class with them one morning last week. As usual, they held the class last week, and we have until mid-November to get the letter out. So they've given us plenty of time to work through all the details that are associated with this and not cause a panic. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. So obviously, this is a very delayed reaction to the disaster at Flint, Michigan. Took them forever to get out or try and get out in front of this, and they did with the usual federal government zest.
They actually referenced that during the
Sure.
class.
So I would assume, and I don't know, have they given any guidance? I'm assuming if we find pipes out of compliance, lead pipes that are public infrastructure, ours, we're going to be expected to pay for that with no recompense. And are they just looking for us to identify privately owned lines by the homeowner, or are we expected to rectify that as well?
A question that nearly everyone on the line asked, and it was not answered. If we find a home like that, we're probably going to have to, or multiple homes like that, we're probably going to have a serious discussion with the council on what action to take.
Mr. Burke?
Is there any, anybody that's gonna help pay the staff to go out and do all these inspections?
No, sir.
So we're
Hence
gonna
the
have,
unfunded mandate.
so we'll probably lose almost a half a FTE probably with the amount of work that this will
Once the
take.
time comes where we're going into the homes, it's going to be it is a major project,
Yeah, that's,
which will take many months to complete.
that's not so good.
Ms. Abdelgawad?
I wonder if there are any grants that might help cover that. There are lots of grants for like water and environmental things, potentially.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My guess is they probably won't make any decisions till long after the election. It's potential change of administration, and then they decide how they want to handle it versus the existing party that has the office now. The federal government is famous for not making any decisions during an election cycle until sometime afterward. We'll come back to you. Mr. Mills.
Are you exploring, instead of putting this extra burden on staff, especially as we're going through the winter season where we may have to have all hands on deck and things like that, exploring what the cost would be to hire a private company to do this for the city?
We will probably go into that if we start to see a significant number of issues that become real, rather than us just going in and checking a pipe and going no lead, where we're 5 minutes in a home. And again, there's no back end to this. So as we're scheduling it in the near term, my only hesitation on hiring it out is because we're certifying and telling the EPA that we're willing to stand behind this. I have more confidence in my own people and their expertise than hiring something out, but it may become necessary.
Just to follow up on that, again, there's a lot of people out there that distrust government in general. And, I mean, there's been enough things on the federal level where it's like, well, we're looking for this, but that's really not what we're looking for. We're looking for something else. You know, I just think we need to make it really clear as far as the opt-out process, if like I wanted to hire my own person, or maybe even we attach, if there's a list of people we know that are credible to do this, that we attach that list to the letter or whatever, because I got a feeling there's gonna be several people that are gonna be concerned about having the city come in thinking that, yeah, they're saying lead pipes, but they're looking for other stuff too, or whatever, so.
I think definitely on making it well known, this is a rule that's imposed on us as well as the homeowners. B, I hesitate ever recommending a firm to somebody, because if they treat them bad, that comes back on us.
Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you, sir. Just a quick question. I anticipate as people start receiving the letter, the panic is going to be, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost me? How do I know? And maybe even before they're willing to wait to hear the report that we get. So you said you don't know what we're going to have to do or what they might have to do. So any recommendations on language we could use talking to people who call us in a panic?
If the first one should be, it's not our rule. Definitely not our rule. This is the city's having to do the same thing with our public infrastructure that is going to be required on you, or that we'll be doing for you. So we're all kind of in this together. None of us like the idea. And I mean, as the Mayor Pro Tem indicated, this is, by their own admission, kind of the final foot falling because of Flint. We don't want that kind of a problem, people to think that that kind of a problem even exists. A lot of the housing stock is after 1989. We can put people at ease pretty quickly with that. I venture to say that the Ward 4 members will suffer more than anybody else under this particular item. Everybody else should get off pretty good by just cutting it off at that. Definitely want to emphasize, and as I'm looking at the letter here and I put that down, we do want to emphasize no determination on what has to be. Right now, it's just an inventory. If we or their contractor finds lead, they have not gone to the step of, you have to do this. It is purely an inventory right now that is being taken. Does not help the people who are going to be paranoid on your side. We're just coming in and looking around. Hang on just one second. Right.
So if somebody,
Right.
they could do it themselves,
Right.
even just without a contractor, they could.
They'll be able to look at, Melissa's watching the meeting right now.
Yeah, so-
She put together the first draft of the letter.
Yeah, and it's really of the letter, so real briefly, a resident could do the interior inspection on their own as long as they submit the report saying that they have done that particular
And
inspection.
it's a specific report.
Specific
And
report, yes.
So that'll be, they can scan this one.
Right,
And
to
take a
do
look
it.
at it. Right.
And then we would still have to do the exterior, so.
Mr. Barber?
Thank you. To me, wouldn't it be more simple for a house, a suspected house, just to do a water test on the house instead of doing a physical inspection? I mean, that would be less intrusive.
I have to check on that one.
I would think it'd be more accurate too, because you're just eyeballing pipes and whatnot. But if you actually took a specimen from the house and had it checked, and that would get rid of the fact that somebody coming into your house and, so just a thought.
Mr. Baker?
Maybe I missed it. Was there like a deadline for this inventory or,
No, it's going to take months.
okay.
There is no back end.
And then is this like nationwide, countywide?
It's nationwide.
So Belton may get hit a little bit harder on older homes.
Yes, they will.
Also, do you think we could have like a city hotline contact number so that instead of us getting bombarded, we have like one messaging, or is there a number on there that,
Yes, there is.
okay, I think that just from a single message for.
There's actually going to be a spot on the website, www.raymore.com/service line. And when we get the final draft of the letter, you all will get it first. And then the Public Works hotline for it is going to be 816-331-2377.
And then do you know, like, or is it just inspecting the supply line, or will they literally have to go through the house and look at all the, like, the interior lines? I mean,
That's where the water test will work better.
yeah.
I think more than anything else, because of the source of this, it is somebody telling us, filling out the form that says, I don't have lead pipes in my house, whether they've looked or not, but we can say, we have this from the resident. Some of them have, like I said, had contractors in. Some of them may want to do it by themselves, but they may just be filling it out. And again, anybody who's after 1989, it isn't going to matter.
Mr. Burke? I would say, too, a couple of things just to keep in mind. First of all, it's in the very early stages of this. So the federal government will eventually probably narrow down the parameters and tell us what they expect to be done and who's to pay and what expense, and if they're going to offer any recompense to individuals or cities. And as Ms. Abdelgawad brought up, we're probably slightly more fortunate. Ward 4 would probably be most affected because that's housing stock would have to be at least 35 years old to be affected by this. Everybody else is basically exempt. So say the vast majority of the housing stock in the city is probably going to be exempt from this. It's going to be small pockets of older infrastructure and Old Town and some of those acreage places out especially for Silver Lake might
Those
hit
are
a
gonna
few
be
of
the two
those. Yeah.
locations.
So it's a pretty good discussion topic. With some good discussion on this. I'd say more to follow whenever we get more. Would you say, sir?
The emphasis being this came up to me in an initial with no information 2 months ago in a side conversation in the engineering meeting, because they were just now hearing about it. And then the meeting itself took place last week.
Okay.
So here we are. Yeah. If anybody's got to pay, I can probably just give you if anybody's got to pay, I have a feeling I know who that's going to be. And it's not going to be the people making the rule.
Any other questions or conversation? Is that all we have?
Include
this evening?
staff reports tonight, sir.
All right. Well, everybody's free to go home and watch KU's basketball, I'm assuming. They don't have a football game tonight, right? just basketball. Okay. And there's I think one of the local football teams or somebody's playing tonight, and our Panthers are going to be playing on Friday. They beat Lee Summit West by 1. Everybody drive safe. It's raining out.